failed the first grade, wasn't good at anything. I mean, I failed at everything I did. So I'm thinking, man, I'm failing at everything. I'm failing in sports, I'm failing with the girls, I'm failing everything. So because of those, a lot of those failures I was having in life, academic failures, all these failures in my life, I had a really hard time answering a really simple question. Why try? Why should I try? Why should I turn in my homework, put effort into life? Why should I listen to my parents? Why should I do anything? I just had a hard time answering this question. Why try? I had a hard time answering the question, why try? Because of my challenges at home and school and my neighborhood. I want to share with you a little bit of those challenges. So I'd hang out with kids my own age, and many of you are going to recognize this, until 5, 6 o'clock at night. And then who do you think I ran around after that? The older kids. I'm a cute little white kid with curly hair and dimples. So the older kids would put all the drugs on me because they knew what? Yeah, I'd never be checked. So the police would roll up on us. I'd run over. I was the diversion. I would talk to the police. The police never checked me. They would hand me Washington Redskins football cards. That was the community outreach. Now, they also put a bubble around me. I know you know some of these guys. If I said their names, I'm on camera, I'm not going to say their names. But they said, Christian, if you use drugs, we're going to kill you. Because I was so young. If anybody messes with you, we'll kill them. So I was this crazy little white kid with curly hair and dimples, just out of control. Because I had like my own mafia, around me, because I could get away with anything. Because the minute anybody wanted to mess with me, all the other kids would say, don't touch him. You have no idea, because every African American in this community is going to kill. Does that make sense? So I was the safest, it sounds at risk. I want to be very clear. I was the safest child in America. One night, I was out late at night, and a car pulled up, and the windows on the car slowly rolled down. And the neighborhood I grew up in, guess what you do when that happens? You take off. Yeah, I took off. And when I took off to run, I heard a voice. And the voice I heard was the voice of this woman right here. Now, see if you can figure out who I'm in the picture. Mama Jackson sees me out there in the middle of the night. She knows what I'm out there doing. And so she's like, look, Christian, the fun and games are over. Don't you ever set foot on our property. I'm going to call the school tomorrow. I'm going to make sure you're not in any of Sean's classes. I remember thinking to myself, dang, I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. I can never go to school with him ever again. Well, luckily, Sean started explaining to his mom a little bit what was going on. He's like, Mom, when I go over to Christian's house, they hardly have any furniture in their house. They have no pictures up on the wall. They don't have a lot of food to eat. Depending where my mom's mental health was, she washed my sheets for me every night. So I never had to sleep in the same sheets twice. My wife has not caught the vision of that. She makes me sleep in the same sheets more than one night. It's a tough one. So anyway, so he explains some of this bizarreness to his mom. And a couple days later, I'm walking to school. Mama Jackson comes flying out of her house in this blue bathrobe. You remember some things from your childhood that they're like life-changing? She has this blue bathrobe on. She's like, I'll tell you what, Christian, if you'll start going to school every day, I want to see your report cards. If you start answering to me, you can come eat in our house anytime you want. Now, Mama Jackson's a seriously good cook. That's the real reason why I'm in top physical condition right now. So it's pretty much an informal foster care situation. She took over and started raising me. Well, a long story short, she spent about 2 years trying to help me with reading, writing, arithmetic. After about that, she realized I was never going to master reading, writing, and arithmetic. So she started giving me something else. She started giving me something called social and emotional education. That's a lot of what this Conquest program is. The purpose of this program is to make sure you have access to those social and emotional skills. And I was grateful that she gave me some of those skills. But I just wear my mom out. And so there's some school years I missed over 100 days of school. It just, because I call it a takeover. I just literally took over the home. She said, go up to your bedroom, don't come out of your bedroom till noon. I go up to the top of my bunk bed. I had a little black and white TV on my dresser. I remember this morning like it was yesterday. I was watching the Andy Griffith Show. Any fans here of the Andy Griffith Show? You know what I'm talking about? Your hands are Opie. All right. I was bonding with Opie that morning because he just got busted. Anybody remember the episode where he steals the comic books? I just got busted from stealing from the local 7-Eleven. I was trying to get a Cal Ripken baseball card. I grew up not too far from the Baltimore Orioles play. And I figured out you had to steal 50 packs of baseball cards to get a Cal Ripken. I'm watching this Andy Griffith Show. I hear this loud knock at the door, and my heart starts racing. I jump out of my bunk bed, I run downstairs. I'm praying. It's Mrs. Plakos, my brave special education teacher who used to stop by the house, praying, truancy officer, probation officer, because everybody in this room knows, a kid with my background, I know the systems at that age. The system's hands pretty tied. The system can't do much to you. But the system was not on my doorstep. Guess who was on my doorstep? Yeah, Mama Jackson. I'm like, oh, crap. So I said to my biological mom, I said, I don't know if you noticed or not, Mom, but you're my mother. That crazy black lady is not my mom. Now, if I wanted food, love, nurturing, Mama Jackson was my mom. If I wanted to get away with murder, then my biological mom was my mom. See, I'm playing these two worlds. They call it triangulation. I'm playing these two worlds back and forth, pretty intense. And so my triangulation hustle started coming to an end that morning. And I said, Mom, please don't open that door. My mom's like, don't worry, I'll tell Mrs. Jackson you're throwing up, you're sick, you're not gonna be able to go to school today. Because my mom had to deal with my abuse, my wrath. So my mom would go to the door and say, Mrs. Jackson, thank you so much for stopping by the house, but Christian is too ill. Christian can't go to school today. Now I learned years later, my mom was winking at Mama Jackson. What was she saying? Help me with this out of control child. Mama Jackson, I'm not proud to say this, but Mama Jackson knew I was abusing my mom. So she wanted to make it really clear that it was her coming through the door, not my mom letting her through the door. So she would smile at my mom and she'd say, Mrs. Moore, you better step on out the way. I'd have the pillows over my head, the covers over my head. She'd reach up over my bunk bed, grab me by my ear, my nose, my hair. I would gently hit the floor. I would gently go flying down the stairs. And Mama Jackson continues to do this today. She sells cosmetics for Mary Kay. And she had just become very successful at it. Guess what she had parked in front of the house? The pink Cadillac, yep. She'd open up the back door of that pink Cadillac. I'd go flying across the back seat. Because she knew if I didn't come to her house the night before, I didn't have any dinner. She definitely knew I didn't have any breakfast that morning. So she'd give me some food, my favorite thing in the world. And the only reason why I'm here speaking to you guys today is because she had a green plate with warm food on it. You can still see this green plate. It had little yellow flowers on the rim of this plate. And she'd have warm food wrapped in tinfoil. And she'd pull over in front of my school, sit out in front of my school sometimes for an hour or 2 hours and talk to me. Because what does she know? She knew there was no way I was going to go sit in a classroom and focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. She knew I was a student who was going to say F you to the teacher, throw my desk across the room. I was the kid, if you looked at me wrong, I'd be like, what you looking at? You want to throw down right here? You know, just because I was hurting inside. That was my only way. Does that make sense? Was to lash back out. I was so angry inside. I had constant rage inside that I had a hard time keeping under control. When I got my college degree, when I got my master's degree, at the time I was the only one in my family to go to college, graduate from college. No one in my immediate family came to my graduation, but Mama Jackson got on an airplane, flew 2,000 miles across the United States. I was sitting on the 10th row and they handed me my master's degree in social work. And I saw her sit in that audience. I thought to myself, before I'm 6 feet under, I'm gonna make sure every person in America has access to the skills that she gave me. It might not sound that significant to you getting through college with my background, but in the US, only 2% of people with learning disabilities, there's mild, moderate, severe learning disabilities. Millions, almost everybody's qualified as having a mild learning disability. You might struggle at math a little bit, reading a little bit, but it doesn't affect you socially or occupationally. With moderate to severe learning disabilities, about 2% get a bachelor's degree, about 2% get a bachelor's degree, 0.5%, not even 1%, get a master's degree. So statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA and becoming LeBron James than standing up here and telling you all this crazy story. Resiliency, the ability to use your problems as your best friend, because the one thing that the whole human condition has is you're gonna have major problems in your life. Everybody in life is gonna have storms in life. Life is going to be good sometimes. Life is going to really suck sometimes. That's the human condition. And when we have storms in our life, when we have challenges in our life, we have two choices. We know after a challenge, anger is going to kick in, frustration is going to kick in, depression, emotions. So the first thing that happens after a challenge is emotions get very intense. The energy that comes from the emotion, I could take that energy in a positive direction, or I could take that energy into a negative direction. And no one ever explained to me what the third option was. So whatever crisis I had, I could either use it as fuel. Most of my life, I didn't use it as fuel. So it took me many years of trying to figure out, because I wanted to know, you have two kids. I saw this even in my own family. You have two kids. They grew up in the same home, the same neighborhood, the same background. The one kid makes it, the other kid doesn't make it. What's the X factor? Does anybody else besides me try to rack your brain? And like I said, I probably spent the first, my wife would say 40 years in this flood zone, but I'd say probably the first 26, 27 years of my life in this flood zone right here. So everybody knows the metaphor. Metaphorically speaking, I'm saying that life's problems are like water. We have to drink enough water, right, to stay alive. But the human body is made up of 90% water or whatever. I don't know if that's the exact number. But too much water, we know, can kill us. In America, we've seen far too much flooding. You know, what direction is the water always going to flow? downhill, least resistance. And so the first thing to kind of get us out of this flood zone with you guys, they talk about a lifeline. What are those lifelines? For me, it's Mama Jackson that I was telling you that reached out and grabbed me. I guess what's hard for me when I look back at a lot of those relationships, I let those relationships down. Does that make sense? I've let my wife down many times. I let Mama Jackson down hundreds of times. I've recently let her down. But what's amazing about those relationships, I know if I was in prison, the one person I know that would visit me is Mama Jackson. She's told me, she goes, Christian, if you're on death row, I'd come visit you. But that's the only person, does that make sense, on planet Earth that I know will be there for me, no matter when I'm doing good or I'm really struggling. And you can maybe think of some of those lifelines in your life. They're the most powerful thing, and those are the things that really motivate me. I mean, now, and I'll talk a little more about this in a few minutes, a lifeline for me is my two kids. They're dependent on me. I call that relational resilience. Is when someone needs you, when someone's dependent upon you, you use that as fuel to not give up, to go through the motions. That's another place that resiliency comes from. I don't get rid of that challenge. I want to put that challenge through this first dam right here, and that's the choice to use positive self-talk. So this is a big thing right here because, like I said, most self-help books are going to say, but what I realized was the most important place I could focus my self-talk is what I had control over. And I spent most of my life focusing my self-talk on what I didn't control. I'm blaming my parents, I'm blaming my neighborhood, I'm blaming all these people that let me down. And one of the most liberating things in the world is when I realized, you know what? I got to focus my self-talk on what I control. I can only focus on what Christian Moore controls. Most people will spend somewhere between 60% to 70% of their energy on what they don't control. If I was in your shoes, I'd say, okay, I don't control the judge, I don't control the person that just asked me to go from here to here to here. Does that make sense? I'd only focus on what I control the best I can. Now, I'm not saying that's easy to do. One of the hardest things in the world is to only focus on what you control. But I would want that. Does that make sense? In the back of my mind. Because I'm going to be a lot less frustrated if my energy is only going towards what I have control over. So I just really challenge with that. To me, that's been very life-changing. I've heard from literally thousands of people who have written me letters saying, crap, I spent 30, 40 years of my life not focusing on what I controlled. And so I want to really, really emphasize that too. That's a very freeing feeling. I don't believe motivation takes place here. See, my brain tells me I'm short, fat, and ugly. I'm a goofball. I never was a good student. Does that make sense? My brain spends most of its time telling me what's wrong with me. So I believe to become motivated, I had to get the heck out of here, and I had to, because to be resilient, I'm talking about resiliency, not success. I'm talking about motivation and resiliency. To become more motivated and to become resilient, I had to tap into character and heart. That means you go through the motions, you don't give up out of respect for other people who believe in you and care about you. For me, it was Mama Jackson, my wife. As far as being motivated and being resilient, resilience is the ability to bounce back when you feel like you have every reason to give up, but you don't give up, you push through. And I find that the heart does that far more than the brain does that. But most of us I spent probably the first 30 years of my life, I stayed up here. Does that make sense? I tried to process everything in the world here. And I realized I needed to focus more here. I really encourage people to get the heck out of here, because this will chew you up, spit you out, and eat you for dinner again. And to spend more time focused on, man, what is this telling me? What's my heart telling me to do? And just kind of pay attention to that kind of inner war. Even when I used all the positive self-talk in the world, I still feel like giving up. I could tap into character and heart, but sometimes those relationships didn't motivate me. I felt like I was in the desert. I felt depressed, frustrated, angry, confused. I felt like giving up. What really got me through that desert was tapping into my passion, purpose, and interest. People would say to me, Christian, we understand your stupid pictures. They're not rocket science here. We get the picture. But where does resiliency come from? Because sometimes I don't feel motivated to apply any of this stuff. Where does that motivation come from? Where does that resiliency come from? And I used to say to people, look, dude, if I knew where resilience came from, I would be the happiest human being on planet Earth. I mean, where does it come from? And then what I realized is you can have all the passion, purpose, or interest, but this passion right here, it leads to a support system. I'm connecting with some of you right now because we have the same passion, purpose, or interest. What got me through the desert was tapping into my personal passion turned outward. Whatever that is, anything that causes you to want to keep fighting on, to not give up, and doesn't hurt yourself or others, that's productive, go for it. It could be anything from becoming a better skateboarder to becoming an artist, a greater athlete, a musician, any passion, purpose, or interest that doesn't hurt yourself or others. What's important is with that passion, purpose, and interest, you try to turn outward and do something for someone else with no thought of anything in return. For example, if I'm into biking, if I have a friend that doesn't have a bike, I might try to earn the money to help that kid or my friend get the bike. And so I'm going to do something for someone else with no thought of anything in return. I didn't get rid of my challenges. Most of the challenges that I have in my life, that I had growing up, I still have today. I just take those challenges and I try to create productive outcomes. If I hurt myself or others, I'm going to be in trouble. If I was going to die tomorrow and someone said to me, what's the last advice you'd give your 2 kids, my 2 boys, the last advice I would give them is that the most powerful thing that I'd ever been taught in life, the most powerful principle I have ever been taught is love. The Beatles got it right when they said all you need is love. That's the most powerful thing I've learned in 44 years of life is love. The second most powerful thing I've learned in 44 years, I kid you not, is this word right here, resilience. The ability to bounce back, the ability to go through hell and back and be able to put one foot in front of another. That's the second most powerful thing I've ever been taught.